Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. I've been running for a few years now and have the privilege of meeting many incredible runners on my travels all across the country. This podcast is intended to share those amazing conversations. And welcome back. I am here with another remote interview here today with Teal Burrell. Sorry, I botched it already, and you just told me. Thanks so much for coming on today and chatting.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Happy to do it.
For sure. So let's kick it off. Who is Teal?
So I am a mom to a about to be 3-year-old. I am a runner. The marathon being my favorite and far and away my best distance. And I am predominantly a stay-at-home mom, but I'm also a freelance science writer on the side. So I write articles for magazines like Discover and stuff like that in my quote-unquote spare time. That's me. Probably a bunch of other things, but those are the big ones.
Awesome. Well, we were connected because you have a really interesting story that a handful of people wanted to hear more about. So you've gone from a 4:07 marathon to a 2:39 marathon. I think that's one of the bigger jumps I've ever heard. And I want to know what was that like? What was that first marathon like?
So the first marathon, I was in college. I was a college sophomore. I had run in high school, track and cross country, eventually all 3 seasons. But then I didn't think I was very good. I didn't think I was good enough to run in college. So I sort of just totally stopped running. And then in college, I was like, I really want to run, but I need a big reason to do it. Just like staying in shape or like feeling good afterward wasn't enough to get me out of bed. So I was like, I'm going to do a marathon. Like, let's just do it. So I did it my sophomore year, trained semi-consistently, did my long runs, tried to do as many other runs as I could. And then, it was just like all about finishing and whatever that looked like. So, yeah.
Cool. How did it evolve from there?
So after that, I once again just totally stopped running. And then it wasn't until I graduated and I moved to Boston and was working in Boston for a few years that I decided I wanted to try and run another one and try to qualify for Boston. Which I think had been sort of in the back of my mind after I finished the first one, but was like, we'll see about that later. And then when I moved to Boston, I was like, let's do it. And I thought it would take a lot of tries and I would have to, it would be like a couple years and it'd be like a really long-term goal. But I ended up qualifying in my second marathon.
You had to run 3:35?
Those were in the 3:40 days. But yeah, I ended up running a 3:28 and really just like shocking myself that I ran that well. And I felt amazing at the end. Like the last couple miles, I was like, oh my God, I'm doing this and I feel great. Yeah. And so then I was like, okay, I'm going to run Boston now because I qualified. And I still sort of felt like that was going to be the end of this like marathoning phase of my life. But as I was training for Boston, I was like, I want to keep doing this. Like, why not? So then I just decided to keep going for it. Actually, after Boston was, so this was 2009, the spring of 2009, was when I kind of came up with this new goal that I wanted to try to qualify for the Olympic trials because I realized like originally this goal of getting to Boston was going to be this long, process and take a couple tries and keep me running. And then it wasn't. So I was like, well, I need a bigger, crazier one. So I was like, let me try and qualify for the Olympic trials, which at that point, my PR was a 3:18. So I'd already taken a lot of time off, but like I had a long way to go. But I just thought that it would keep me going and I would get better. And even if I never made it to the trials, like having some ridiculous goal like that would give me something to shoot for and would certainly help me to run faster and keep me in the sport. So that's kind of when that dream started.
And where were you living when you were in Boston?
I lived in Cambridge.
So did you do a lot of your training on the course itself?
I did. So, yeah, I did a lot of the long runs on the course, especially like from the Newton Hills on, sort of towards home, towards Cambridge where I lived. But I did like take the train out to like Framingham one day and run the last 20 miles for one of my runs. Mm-hmm.
So a handful of people have talked about how Boston became their goal. That's what got them hooked. What was it about running Boston that you loved, that you wanted to actually tell me about running Boston? What was that experience like?
Oh gosh. It was just so exciting. Like the excitement of, there's always so much excitement at a marathon. Like everybody's hyped to be there. They've trained, like it's a big deal. But like Boston is just like on another level because everyone's not only trained to get there, like they trained just to qualify to get there.
Right.
So like some people have been at this for like years and years, and you could
Right.
just feel that on the starting line. You could feel that the whole weekend when you're, going to the expo to get your bib or whatever. Like it was just so exciting. And I love that like the elites, this was when I sort of started getting into like watching the elite side of the sport. And like, I love that they were running, in front of us and like sharing the same course that we were doing. And up to that point, I just run smaller races. So there wasn't that sort of prestige. And I just like, just all the stories and all the like things on that course, like the Wellesley Scream Tunnel and the signs that, people write and are shouting your name, like your bib or whatever the whole time. It was just like, so exciting on a whole nother level. And living in Boston, before that, like I had never watched the marathon because I had to work on that day, but just like you could just still feel it around the city, like the year before or whatever. And I lived right near a running store, and they would always like put out all these like cool things like in the windows and stuff leading up to Boston. I was like, man, I want to get there. You could see the people wearing their jackets. Like there's just so much hype around it. And I was like, I want to be there. And then when I got there, I was like, yeah, this is it. It lived up to the hype.
Yeah, totally. So you ran that, and then you refocused on the trials.
Yeah, sort of. It was a long off goal. So I knew that like, I didn't think I was going to like run, I said my PR was 3:18, and back then I didn't even know like what the standard would be because it changes every 4 years. But I knew it'd be like 2:45-ish, let's say. And I didn't think I was going to run like 2:45-ish in my next race. So I just sort of gradually was like, okay, well, I broke 3:20. Can I break 3:15? And then if I break 3:15, can I break 3:10? And then like, I just sort of kept going at like 5-minute increments and like, just tried to see like where that would take me.
So instead of the big goal of running sub 2:45, you instead focused on those incremental gains, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of people, I'm going to reference again the most referenced person on this podcast, Peter Bromka. The conversation I had with him prior to running Boston 2019 was, he said that people come to him all the time and say, hey Peter, I want to break 3, or I want to BQ, or I want to do this and do that. And he tries to reshift their focus to say, okay, but you're not going to do that this year. Mm-hmm. Do you have a 2-year plan or your 5-year mm-hmm. plan? Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a very important piece that is probably, a large part of why you've been successful in taking that time off, because it's a little bit more manageable than, a 30-minute PR, right?
Yeah, definitely. Then, so this was, like I said, in 2009, and I sort of thought in the back of my mind, like maybe I'd make it in 2012. And as 2012 got closer, I was like, okay, not 2012, like it's going to be 2016. And like that, that was a long way off then, but I just like knew that I, if I had more time, I would be more likely to make it. And also I think, it wasn't just like not expecting to take 30 minutes off. It was also like, I just sort of slowly made changes to like, not just training, but also like nutritionally, or like doing, strength or core work. Like I wasn't like, okay, this season I'm going to like change everything. It was like, well, if I just get a little bit better at this and a little bit better, like next season, it was very gradual. And I think that, helped me from just being overwhelmed and like totally, burning out.
Trying to change everything all at once. You can see which variables work and have an impact. So let's talk 2016 versus 2020. I spectated both races and saw a massive difference. What was it like running?
It was, obviously there was both races were very challenging in very different ways. 2016 was super hot and 2020 was super hilly and windy. And I thought that I am not a heat runner and I am a strength hill kind of person. So I thought like I would do better this time around. Both times I think I was equally disappointed with where I ended up. But yeah, this time it was just like so wild. I mean, being there in 2016 was really exciting for me because obviously like that had been my goal for so long to make it to the trials. And like I was there and it was like such a celebration of my achievement being there. And like I had so many family that are like, I can't even express how supportive they are. And they all came to LA and like, it was just such a celebration of like my achievement.
Right.
And 2020 was like very different. I got, like still I had family there that was celebrating my achievement, but it really felt the whole weekend through like a celebration of like everyone's achievement and like
Running.
especially running, and especially on the women's side. I mean, obviously I can only like speak to that, but it was just like there were so many people cheering and there were so many events all weekend long and everyone was so hyped. And like this time as well, I was I'm on the Oiselle haute volée team. And there was 24 of us there on the line. And then like, I don't know, hundreds of volée out cheering. Like the Oiselle section was insane. And so it just felt like much more a community like celebration for me personally than the first time around when it was like, I was kind of there by myself and like just had my family. And this time it was like off the wall, like cheering, I mean, craziness, the whole thing all weekend.
I felt the same way. I felt like LA was like it was a race. It was cool.
Yeah.
But it played second fiddle to, was it the Grammys or the Oscars that were happening that week?
Yeah, I think the Grammys. I don't know. It was in February, so
yeah,
I don't know.
So whatever it was, it didn't feel like the main event because LA is the way it is. But Atlanta, I mean, I got there on Wednesday and I stayed at the Omni Hotel Wednesday night, and you couldn't, like, it took 15 minutes to get from the elevators to the door. Just like you see everyone that you know, and it's like a homecoming, and it's just crazy. Like getting the chills thinking about it. And it was crazy. It was such a cool celebration of, like you were saying, running in general.
Yeah.
So
and so many more. It wasn't just the the elites, the people racing. Like it was so much more about the community and everyone else cheering for us. Like, whereas in LA, I felt like I was kind of like, I mean, LA was fun and it was hyped up, but it was kind of like I was making my own hype. And this time it was like, it's everywhere.
Right. Delivered for you. What were you thinking about on the starting line?
What was I thinking about on the starting line?
I wish this wind would stop.
I don't know. Was I even thinking about the wind? I don't know. I don't remember what I was thinking about on the starting line. I was just excited to be there and excited to get started. And I remember there was some weird thing where they like said, okay, we have 1 minute, we have 2 minutes left. And then they're okay, we have 1 minute left. And I was like, wait, what? But like, there wasn't any time there, but then it was some like misunderstanding. I don't know. So I remember being like, wait, how much time? Really? Seriously? Are we about to go? And then once we started, it was just like, it was the weirdest start ever because there's like hundreds of women that are exactly the same.
Right.
Which is like not true at any other race. You might have like 20 people and we had like 500. So then we're just like crawling along like, oh, okay, we're just going to jog for a mile in this mass of people. It was very
What did you run the first mile in?
It was like 6:20, but the leaders were like, I could see them. They ran like 6:13 or something. And my watch at points was like 7 minutes. And I was like, are we really running 7 minutes right now?
I saw people on Strava. It was like 27, 28 miles. So a lot of building.
Yeah. I think my first 2 miles were just totally off.
So how do you break up a marathon? Where do you go mentally?
So for this one, I mean, I think I usually break it up 10 miles, 10K. With this one, I obviously broke it up based on the loops, which were 8 miles, and then 10.2. So I just kind of like had different goals for each loop.
Cool. What are you thinking about after the first 20?
Get to the finish. It's like counting down the miles to the finish and just trying to, give everything I have at that point, which is like sometimes just putting one foot in front of the other. Yeah.
Got it. Cool. It was a pretty spectacular day. It was really cool. I think I saw you with a smile on your face every time you went by. And it was just so cool to see just how happy everybody was.
Yeah.
Despite the wind and hills and broken roads.
Yeah. I mean, it was really tough, just conditions. Honestly, I trained on like much worse hills than were in Atlanta, but just like the combination of, them being like, there just not being any flat section and and the wind being so bad, it was like really, really hard. Harder than I would have thought given those hills. But like you said, like, I mean, we were all smiling. There was so many people cheering for us the whole way. Like it was impossible not to just be like excited. I mean, probably in the last 10K, I did not look that happy, but it was like, you know, it was hard not to just soak it in and be like, this is pretty freaking awesome.
So what's next?
So just going to be honest, what's next is I'm going to try to grow my family again. I had my first kid, tried to get pregnant after the 2016 trial. So I'm going to take the same kind of tact after 2020. So, just going to try to have another baby. And honestly, the first time around, I was very like secretive about it. I think a lot of women are, for good reason. But that like really drove me crazy. And I really appreciate when people are like honest, and more people are being open with, you know, the fears and stresses and, you know, the worries about miscarriaging and stuff. And so I was just like, I'm just going to be honest from the jump. So, that's the plan from here.
Cool. What was running postpartum like?
It was a challenge is a understatement. It's just like your whole body is just like so wrecked from childbirth, and like, especially your core. And it's like a very weird sensation. You know, you always hear like, oh, your core matters for running, but like, you never really think about it. You're like, okay, I'm going to do my core because I need to. But then when you have a baby, you're like, oh yeah, you need core muscles, because if you try to run when they're wrecked, it's like, it just is like the weirdest sensation. Doesn't feel right at all.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
So let's shift over to the science side of things. So
sure.
I read somewhere that your explanation of what you do is explaining science to non-scientists. Let's talk about that. What does that mean?
Yeah, so that is what I try to do. So I have a PhD in neuroscience, which I got because I wanted to do research and be a scientist. But then somewhere along the way, I decided that I actually really like, I really didn't like how if you do research, you're just like so focused on like one little tiny niche of science, and like you don't get to see that much of it. And I really wanted to teach, and like it's very hard to like only teach. You have to do research as well. So then I decided that I wanted to write about it, because then I could write about like literally different things every day or every week that interested me. And also I still like kind of feel like it's teaching. So my goal is to kind of be able to be like a link between the scientists who use their jargon and talk over everybody's head, and try to like translate that to, you know, regular people who are just interested in like what's going on in medicine or like Alzheimer's disease or whatever. I think sometimes, you know, scientists have a hard time sort of dumbing it down to talk to people who don't know that jargon. So my hope is to kind of be the link there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have a coworker who has a PhD as well, and one of his roles is translational science, is how he calls it, taking it from thoughts and theories and facts and helping it get disseminated to people like myself who don't have PhD.
Right.
So what are some of the projects you've worked on that have been particularly meaningful?
Oh my goodness. Let me think. I don't know. I guess what's been the most fun is like, I have a, you know, background obviously in neuroscience, but I've been able to write a lot also about like physiology and exercise and stuff, just because like I find that obviously interesting to my, you know, for me personally, and have like read a lot about it, even though it's not what my degree is in. So I've had a lot of fun writing articles about running or about like exercise and trying to bust some of the myths about exercise or weight loss or whatever. So that's been really fun. And then I can't really think off the top of my head
what are some of those myths that you've worked to bust?
Let me see. Well, I mean, there's a lot about the, you know, just like exercise leads to like doesn't help you with weight loss, which I actually wrote a whole article about. And I went in thinking that was not true, because I've lost a lot of weight through exercise. But like it's incredibly, incredibly complicated. And the thing I came away with was like, it might be true. And it totally depends on your own physiology and who you are as like just your own physiology. So it's a lot harder to lose weight through exercise than a lot of people assume, because some of us are able to do it and some aren't. And so I think that we need to be a little kinder to people who are struggling and not just be like, oh, you need to run more. Like, it's so much more complicated than that. So yeah.
Cool. So you mentioned that you do a lot of freelance work, and you're doing this from home. I think a very topical question these days is around, how do you balance being at home and being productive and family life and this and that? What are some of your best practices, or what are you doing that's been working? What have you been doing that's been working?
So I used to do freelance full time. And so then for those people who are, full time working right now, I mean, it was really just about like creating an environment like you would at work. Like I would, get up and run, and then I would go to work at, 9:00 and work till 5, and like really try to make it like almost as if I had a boss, like looking over my shoulder, being like, you have to be here, and you have to be like, a thing a lot of writers say is like ass in chair. Like you just need to sit in the chair and do the work.
Right.
And so like, when I was doing it full time, it was very much like I really just tried to like pretend like it was a real job with a boss hanging over my shoulder, and I had to be there at such and such hours. And now I do it part time as I'm a stay at home mom. And so then it's just like fitting it in when I can. My daughter goes to my mother-in-law's one day a week usually, so that's like the day that I really just try to do as much work as I can. And other than that, I'm doing it at nap time or on the weekends or like whenever I can sort of fit it in. And again, it's just kind of like, especially for writing, it's just like ass and chair. Like you just need to sit there even when you don't feel like it. And you could obviously like go walk around your house and go make another snack or go, I don't know, do something else. It's like, no, you just need to sit there. And even if it doesn't feel like you're in the mood to work, like let it come to you and just, try to stay focused in your chair.
Cool. What are some big, scary goals that you have running wise in the future?
Well, I definitely want to try and qualify for 2024. And forever and ever and ever, amen. Basically, I want to qualify for as many trials as I can.
Yeah.
I'm super inspired by the women who've been like to do like 4 or 5. So, first comes 3, let's take it one at a time. But then also, I mean, this is like probably a goal that's never going to happen, but I'll just say it because, this is how I live. I really like to break 2:30 in the marathon, which is like totally insane. And I'm 9 minutes away and I've come really far. So like, that's a pretty bold statement, but I say that like I did when I was talking about my original journey was like, maybe I'll never make 2:30. I probably won't, but like, let me try 2:35. Let me try 2:37. Like that's like the kind of tact I'm going to take. Like once I say I want to do 2:30, then 2:37 doesn't seem as crazy. And then 2:35 doesn't seem as crazy. Like, so that's kind of how I take things, like put a really big goal out there and then be like, well, that's insane, but 2 minutes isn't that crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my crazy goal.
And what does it take to get there? How do you set that up?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I just continue to try to sort of evaluate, what's gone right and wrong in the past season, and just try to go forward and say, like, what could I do better next time? I think this last year I've felt a little bit burnt out. And so like taking a break to have a baby is also kind of taking a break to like just step away from running for a bit. I think mentally that will help. And then also like, I just feel like I, have had some mental issues I need to like deal with in terms of like, just being in the race and like really believing myself again. And so like, just trying to focus on those. And then, after I do get back into running another marathon, see what, I guess after each season, I just try to assess and see what I could have done better and then try to do that the next season. Not like totally overwhelming, like trying to change everything, but just like one thing.
So what I really like about your story is that it's not like I'm going to pick a goal and that'll be that. It's you're picking a goal and you're working towards it. And it sounds like the process of getting better is what you're most interested in. Is that a correct assessment?
Yeah, I would say for sure. Cause even like, I mean, even originally, I didn't necessarily think I was really going to make the trials. Like, I wrote in my journal, like, that's crazy. I'm probably never going to make it, but I'll get better. And like, I mean, that's a quote from that journal. Like, I didn't
Right.
think I was going to necessarily get there, but I did just want to get better. And it's still true today.
So I just released my 58th episode on this podcast, and it's mostly professional or elite athletes or professional or high performing people in their field.
Mm-hmm.
And the consistency throughout has been process oriented, not goal oriented. And I think it's fascinating that elites have this perspective, but and many of them, it's their job to perform and it's their job to win races and represent brands and things like that. But they're still not focused on, I want to win. They're focused on, I want to get better. And I think that amateurs, and I'll put myself in this bucket, like I was focused on breaking 3 for 4 years. And that was the goal. And it wasn't enjoy it. It wasn't anything else. It was like, I want to, well, it was actually to BQ, which was 305, and then it became 3. And now it's like, I probably would need to run a 230 with you to BQ these days. And I just want to, like, what do you think the disconnect there is between elites and amateurs, where you would think that amateurs are more focused on the fun and elites are more focused on the outcome, but it's flip-flopped?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think maybe, I really don't know, but I think maybe like in terms of the professional field, like there's so much pressure to like have to win or to make the Olympic team or to win a gold or whatever. And like very few professionals are actually going to do that. 3 people make the Olympic team every 4 years. And so I think that there has to be some sort of like release of the pressure. Like,
right.
Yes, I want to win. I want a gold medal at the Olympics, but like, maybe that won't happen. And let me just appreciate the fact that I love what I'm doing anyway.
Right.
And so I think maybe it's just like some sort of mental way to just like release that and step back and realize like
disassociate from the outcome.
This is awesome anyway. Yeah. Distance yourself from the outcome so that you can enjoy it, because otherwise it would be overwhelming. And I think, maybe some amateurs do sort of overwhelm themselves with their goals, and then it's like not fun anymore. And then why are we doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't achieve my goal until I disconnected from the need to achieve it. I went into my marathon last spring, standing on the start line. It was raining, and I was like, I had a shit-eating grin on my face. I was like, let me go. Like, this is it. And I didn't care if I ran 259, 301, 320, 255, whatever it was. I had won because I was on the start line. And then when the race started, I just couldn't stop. And it just felt so good. And I think that it's really hard to get to that place. And it takes a coach, it takes a village to mentally get to that place. But once you're there, I think the sky's the limit for sure.
Yeah. I would say also on that, like, I mean, I definitely have, I'm definitely not perfect at this either. Like, I definitely have had times where I've been like too tied to a time, because I have been like, I mean, my goals are, like you said, like times. Right. And so, I mean, I have definitely
progress versus gaining a time.
Yeah. So sometimes it does, like, I mean, I have beaten myself up over, like, I tried to break 250 for a really long time before I actually did. And like, I was kind of tied to that as like my white whale or whatever. Like, I couldn't break it. And so that was frustrating.
But how did you get past that?
I just kept at it. I mean, it's like the answer no one wants to hear. Like, you just keep at it. I just kept at it. And I kept believing that even though I hadn't run 250, I had been training. Like, my training showed that I was faster than 250 for a while. And so, like, I kept saying, like, my PR was 253. And then I ran, and then I was like, oh yeah, I could break 250. And then I ran a 252. And I was like, but now I'm in 248 shape. And then I ran a 258. And I was like, but wait a minute, now I'm in 246 shape. Like, I just knew that I was actually in better shape than I was performing on the day. And so I kept just thinking, like, the next season, like, okay, I'm starting out and I'm really in a 248 runner, even though I don't have that time to show for it. And just kept believing that. And then the first time I broke 250, I ran 242 because it like had been such a long time coming.
Yeah.
And because I just continued to believe. It's really hard to do. I mean, we all have our dark days when we think, actually, you know, I don't think I could do this, but I had to just kind of continue to believe that like the training I was putting in and the workouts I was doing equated to faster than I had run on the day, because, you know, marathons are cruel and that's just how it works out sometimes.
My coach talks about it as the trial of miles. Like you said, the only way to get better is to just keep doing it. Des and her quote, keep showing up. I mean, that's the secret. The secret is there is no secret. You have to keep doing it. It took me 4 marathons over like a 4-year period to do it. I ran 335 as my first, then 327, then 320, then 401, and then 259. And so I took 20 minutes in between the 320 and the 259, but that was a 2-year hiatus.
Right.
And so it was the same thing. It's like when I ran the 401, I was in 305 shape.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, because the 2 times that I like had like my biggest, besides the first marathon, or I should say the first to the second marathon, the 2 times I had like my biggest breakthroughs, like to run that 242, I was a 10-minute PR. And before that, the first time I broke 3 hours, that was a 15-minute PR. The marathons prior to that, both occasions, were like my worst to date. Like I ran, like you said, like, you know, your 401, like it was like you had the absolute worst day. And then the next race, it was like the absolute best, because you're sort of like angry that like that didn't go your way, and you know you're better than that. And it gives you like a little extra something.
No, the 401 was I think the most impactful race I had run to that point. It was Boston 2017, and I did everything wrong leading up to it. I came home the 3 days prior with 30,000 steps, and I started the race feeling like I had done 3 long runs. You know, I fell victim to everything that Boston weekend has to offer, and, you know, seeing all the people and doing all the things. And then I get to mile 7 and I'm like, I'm fucked. like my day is done here. And staring down the road with 19 miles to go, like realizing that you're in for, you know, some shit, like that's character building. And it's days like that it took me probably 3 months to recover from that. And I wouldn't trade that I took 3 weeks off of running, and I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. My favorite memory of that race was I have a friend who's solidly a 4-hour marathoner, and he finished in 407 and I finished in 401. And so I saw him like minutes after finishing, and he was like, holy shit, man, if I knew you were 6 minutes up the road, I would have run my ass off to beat you. And it was just a really funny. I mean, I felt awful in the moment, but it's days like that where like you find out what you're made of, and like you said, you leap forward from something like that.
Definitely.
So you mentioned you're part of Oiselle. I love what they're doing on the community side of things. And funny story about them and this podcast, we were talking about podcast sponsorship, and this was in February, and I was talking with Rebecca about it, and she was like, sorry, we can't do it. We spent the whole budget on the party. I went to that party, and I can confirm that they spent the whole the whole budget.
That was a pretty fun party.
But the energy in the room when Lizzo came on, and good as hell, I have never seen energy like that anywhere before. So let's talk about your experience with them.
I mean, I just love them so much. I reached out to them in 2018 to be part of their team. I was in 2016. I was part of a DC based team, and I was one of the only. There was one other woman who qualified for the 2016 trials from my team back then, but like she just joined and we didn't really know each other, so I was kind of there alone. And I remember being at the start line of 2016 trials and seeing like, I don't know exactly how many of the people they had, but like 20 Oiselle girls, and they were just like all friends and like, you know, high-fiving and like having a great time. And I was like, I'm gonna be on that team. And then, I mean, I loved my DC team to death, and some of them are still my best friends, but I moved from DC anyway. So then I was like, well, let me see if I can reach out to Oiselle. And so I was on their Volet team, which is just like the team that's available to anybody, no pace or whatever. You can just sign up to join, and plug for that. You can sign up to join starting in April. If anyone's interested, they can also just reach out to me if they have questions about that. But so I was on that team for a while and like met a bunch of people in Richmond that are on that team. It's a great way to meet like local runners. And I just moved to Richmond, Virginia, which is where I live now. So that was great. And then I joined the Haute Volet about a little over a year ago. And that's just been really fun to be part of that team, and really to be part of the Volet team as well. You go to different cities to run races, and there's people there that, you could stay with, that that there's a party after every race. And it's just like really fun. And so many people, like, it's just so much support that you feel wherever you go, whatever race you're running, however fast you're going or not fast, like everybody's just on your side. And it's just so much fun. And we had they do the big bird camp in the summertime. There's just like a whole weekend of just like women's empowerment, and you come away from it feeling like, we're awesome and we're going to change the world. And like, that's really what Oiselle just feels like all the time. And so it's been really awesome. And the trials weekend, being part of that team and that party, and Cowbell Corner, which is their section of the course, which was just like insane. Like, I mean, you couldn't even like make out a voice. Like, it was just like loud, like crazy cheers. So it's just like so fun to be part of that team, and really be with a company that really supports women through all walks of life, and really just like supports each other no matter what we're going through. It's just like really awesome. And I can't say enough good things about them. And that party was so fun. I mean, I had run a marathon that day. I haven't stayed out that late since my daughter was born, I don't think. And it was just so fun. And I was like dancing even though my legs were, on fire. And it's just like a testament to how fun it was.
Yeah. And they had some very healthy pours with their wines. So it was, it was fun. I walked in, I got in the elevator, and I looked at the guy. There were like 4 guys that got in the elevator at the time. And I was like, I think I recognize this guy. And it was Abdi. And he had just like podiumed.
Yeah. Okay. So I did not realize that he was there until afterwards. There's a photo of me on stage, and he's like 5 people away from me. And I'm like, Abdi was there? Like, I didn't even notice that. Yeah. I was just like, there was so much going on. But yeah, that was crazy. He was there.
Yeah, it was just like, that was the place to be. I mean, it was that was wild. Well, awesome. So where can we find you if we want to continue to follow your adventures and your journey towards 2:29:59?
Yeah. Now people are gonna be like, this girl's crazy, but I will have you know, I did make it all the way to the trials when people would have thought that was crazy. So on Instagram, that's where I usually post the most stuff, is at Runner Teal. I'm also Twitter at Runner Teal. And I still have a blog called Miles to the Trials, which nowadays is just basically me writing like race reports about how my races went. So you can check that out as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much for doing this today, and we'll see you out there.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Yep. That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next week on For the Long Run. And in the meantime, happy trails. If you've enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too.